Damn it, where's her phone? That was the thought that started everything. Just a quick, simple thought. I wasn't suspicious, I wasn't looking for anything, just needed to call a restaurant for reservations. My phone was dead, and her phone was somewhere buried in the chaos of our house. Then I found it. Her phone, half hidden under a pillow on the couch, screen lighting up with a message. Miss you already, can't wait to see you again. It didn't take long for my heart to plummet into my stomach. My hands froze mid-reach. I stared at the screen like it was a bomb about to go off. Miss you already. Who the hell is missing her? And why is someone so excited to see her again when she was supposed to be spending the day with me? I'm not the jealous type. Hell, I'm not the kind of guy who even checks my wife's phone. But that one message, changed everything. My mind started racing in a way I hadn't felt in years, decades maybe. And in that moment, a part of me knew. I knew that nothing was ever going to be the same again. I grabbed the phone, swiped it open, and just sat there staring at it for what felt like an eternity. This was the woman I'd been married to for over 7 years. The woman I trusted with everything. And here, in front of me, was a message that made me question all of it. I knew I should have stopped right there. Closed the phone, put it back, pretended I never saw it. But you know how it goes, you can't unsee something like that. So, I kept going. I opened the chat. Yesterday was amazing. Can't wait for next time. There was a knot tightening in my chest. Who the hell was this? Scrolling up, I found more of the same. Flirty banter, secret meetings. Then it hit me last Thursday, when she said she was at yoga. And Monday. And... oh God, how far back does this go? Weeks? Months? I dropped the phone like it was burning my hand. This wasn't just some innocent conversation. This was real. This was happening. My wife was cheating on me. And I had no idea what the hell I was going to do about it. I didn't want to believe it, you know? Even with the proof staring right at me, part of me still thought there had to be some other explanation. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone was messing with her. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. You don't get messages like, "I'll never forget last night," from someone you're not screwing around with. I sat there for a long time, phone still open on my lap, just scrolling through the messages. My fingers went numb from holding it too tight. I started noticing the details, the dates, the times. All those nights when she told me she was out with friends or running errands late after work, all those evenings when she came home too tired to talk or even make eye contact with me, they were all in those messages. Everything started clicking into place, like some sick puzzle I didn't even know I was trying to solve. That Thursday when she was supposedly going to her friend's place? Turns out she wasn't with her friend at all. She was with him. Same with the other nights she went out for drinks after work or had to stay late for a meeting. It was all bullshit. It was the same guy every time, too. Some asshole named Brad. That was the name at the top of every message. Who the hell is Brad? I didn't know a Brad. None of our friends were named Brad. I didn't know him from her work, from the gym, from anywhere. But this guy? He sure as hell knew my wife. Way better than he should. I found photos next. That's what broke me. Scrolling back through the chat, there were a few pictures. Some were selfies, stupid, flirty ones you'd send if you were in high school or something. Her smiling, making little kissy faces. But then there were other pictures. Pictures that I didn't need to see. Pictures of them together. And they weren't just standing next to each other, either. She was wrapped around him, smiling like she hadn't smiled at me in months. They looked happy. I couldn't breathe. My throat closed up, and for a second, I thought I was going to pass out right there. It felt like I'd been sucker punched, like my whole world had been flipped upside down in the span of 15 minutes. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Do I call her? Do I text her? Do I wait until she comes home and act like everything's fine? Or do I just leave? Pack up some stuff, walk out, and never come back? I couldn't think straight. I couldn't even stand up. All I could do was sit there on the couch, holding her phone, shaking. That's when I heard the front door open. My stomach dropped. She walked in, talking on her phone, carrying a bag of groceries like it was just another normal day. She didn't even glance at me at first, just wandered into the kitchen, still talking. I could hear her say something like, "Yeah, I'll talk to you later," before hanging up and tossing her phone on the counter. Then she turned around and froze when she saw me, still sitting on the couch with her phone in my hand. "What are you doing?" she asked, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. I didn't say anything at first. My mouth was dry, and I couldn't get the words out. I just held up her phone so she could see it. "Your phone was on the couch," I said, my voice shaking even though I was trying like hell to keep it steady. Her face went pale. I watched her eyes flicker between the phone and my face. She knew. She didn't have to ask. She knew I'd seen everything. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper now. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she just stood there, staring at me like a deer caught in the headlights. I could see the gears turning in her head as she tried to figure out what to say, how to talk her way out of it. But we both knew there wasn't a way out of this. "Is this real?" I asked, a little louder this time, because she still hadn't said a damn thing. She finally snapped out of her daze, blinking hard, shaking her head like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. I can explain," she stammered, stepping toward me like she could somehow fix this with a few words. "Explain? Are you kidding me? You're gonna explain this?" My voice was louder now, the anger bubbling up in my chest like I couldn't hold it down anymore. "How are you gonna explain this, huh?" I waved the phone at her, showing her one of the messages she sent to Brad. "You're screwing some guy behind my back, and you're gonna explain it? How do you explain that?" She flinched, like she hadn't expected me to yell. Good. Let her flinch. Let her feel scared. She should be scared. I wasn't, she started, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "Don't you dare lie to me right now. I saw everything. I saw the messages, I saw the pictures. I know you're sleeping with him." She swallowed hard, and for a second, I thought she was going to keep denying it, try to weasel her way out. But she didn't. Instead, she just dropped her head into her hands and let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." That's when I lost it. I stood up so fast the phone fell out of my hand and hit the floor with a thud. "You're sorry? That's it? That's all you've got to say to me?" I was pacing now, hands running through my hair, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. "How long, huh? How long has this been going on?" She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling. I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy for her. Not after this. "How long?" I demanded, my voice louder this time, almost a shout. "A few months," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of my heart hammering in my ears. "A few months. Jesus Christ." My stomach lurched, and I thought I was going to be sick right there in the living room. This wasn't some one-time mistake. This wasn't some moment of weakness she could brush off. This was a full-blown affair. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice lower now, though the anger was still simmering right under the surface. He's nobody," she stammered, shaking her head like she was trying to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal. "He doesn't mean anything to me, I swear. It was just." "Just what?" I cut her off, stepping closer, my fists clenched at my sides. "Just something to pass the time? Just a distraction? What, I wasn't enough for you?" She looked at me with wide, tear-filled eyes, like she couldn't believe I'd ask that. "No, that's not." "Then what the hell is it, huh? What's your excuse?" I was practically spitting the words at her now. I could feel the rage boiling over, bubbling out in every word. I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. She started to sob, her whole body shaking. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she cried. "I never meant to hurt you, I swear. It just happened. It just happened." That's what she was going with. Like she'd tripped and fallen into some other guy's bed. Like she hadn't made a series of deliberate choices to meet up with him, to lie to me, to betray me over and over again. "Bullshit," I spat, turning away from her because I couldn't even look at her anymore. "That's such bullshit, and you know it." She was crying harder now, her voice shaking as she tried to keep talking. "Please, just let me explain," she begged, stepping toward me again. "It didn't mean anything, I swear. It was a mistake, it's over. Please, just let me fix this." Fix this? How the hell was she planning to fix this? She couldn't. There was no fixing this. There was no going back. She'd made her choice, and now we were both going to have to live with it. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My chest was heaving, my hands were shaking, and I felt like I was going to explode if I stayed in that room with her any longer. "I need to go," I finally muttered, heading for the door. "Please, don't go," she cried, rushing after me, grabbing onto my arm. "We can work this out, I swear. We can fix this, please don't leave." I shook her off, not even looking back as I yanked the front door open and stormed out of the house. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. I don't remember how long I was out of the house. Could have been 10 minutes, could have been an hour. I just walked, barely seeing anything around me. Everything felt numb. My legs moved on their own, carrying me away from her, away from everything we had built. Away from the mess she created. And yet, I was still spinning with rage, with disbelief. It was like my brain couldn't keep up with what had just happened. The reality of it all was too much to process in one go. When I finally stopped walking, I was at the park a few blocks away, sitting on a bench under a dead streetlight. I stared at the dark sky, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. Divorce? Leave her right away? Try to work it out? I didn't know. None of it seemed real. The problem was, as much as I hated what she had done, the idea of tearing my life apart was just as terrifying. But staying? Staying with a woman who had lied to me, who had betrayed me, that felt even worse. And yet, I didn't know how to untangle myself from her, from the life we shared, from the promises we had made. After a while, I stood up. I had to go back, even if I wasn't sure what I would do when I got there. The night was cold, but I couldn't feel it. Nothing felt right. My mind raced between anger, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite name. I hated her for what she'd done, but I also couldn't stand how broken she had looked when I left. The part of me that still loved her, a part one wasn't ready to admit existed, was battling with the side of me that wanted nothing more than to throw her out of my life forever. When I got back to the house, it was dead quiet. I stood outside for a minute, staring at the door, wondering if she was still inside, wondering if I even wanted to go in. I half expected to see her car gone, her stuff packed, but everything was exactly the same as it had been when I left. I pushed the door open and walked in. She was sitting on the couch, exactly where I had left her, hunched over with her hands covering her face. She looked up when I came in, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She hadn't moved, hadn't done anything. Just sat there in her guilt and shame. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't have the words, so I just stood there, staring at her like I was trying to recognize the person I'd been married to for 7 years. But I couldn't. All I could see was a stranger. "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I finally said, my voice low, but heavy. "You didn't mean to hurt me, but you did it anyway." She swallowed hard, her body trembling as she looked up at me. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "I never wanted this." "Then why did it happen?" I shouted, unable to hold it back anymore. "How the hell does something like this just happen? You didn't trip and fall into someone else's bed. You chose this. You made that choice over and over again." She flinched at my words, the tears streaming down her face, but I wasn't going to let her cry her way out of this. I wasn't going to let her make herself the victim here. I wasn't thinking, she stammered, her voice breaking. It just started out as, I don't even know, just talking. We didn't mean for it to go that far. Well, it did, I snapped. It did go that far, and you lied to me every single day about it. I'm sorry. She cried, her hands reaching out toward me like she thought she could somehow undo everything with those words. I'm so sorry. I stepped back, avoiding her touch, because I couldn't stand the idea of her hands on me. The hands that had been on him. The thought alone made my skin crawl. How long? I asked, my voice cold now. I needed to know. Even if it killed me, I had to know. She hesitated for a moment, wiping at her face, sniffling like that was supposed to fix anything. A few months, she finally whispered. A few months, I repeated, my heart sinking deeper into my chest. Months. Months. And you didn't think to stop? I tried to, I really did, she stammered. I told him it was a mistake. I told him we couldn't keep doing it, but, she broke off into sobs again, covering her face with her hands. It just got out of control. I'm so sorry, please, I didn't want this. Didn't want this? I echoed, shaking my head. What did you want, then? Because it sure as hell wasn't me. She shook her head frantically, like she couldn't stand the idea of me saying it out loud. No, that's not true, she cried. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that hurt my throat. You've got a real funny way of showing it. It wasn't about love, she said, her voice desperate now. It wasn't even about him. I wasn't looking for someone else. I was just lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt so alone. Alone? I shot back, my voice rising again. Alone? I'm here every damn day. I come home to you every night. I've been right here the whole time. How the hell were you alone? I don't know, she sobbed, shaking her head. I don't know, I couldn't help it. That was it. That was her excuse. She couldn't help it. I felt the anger surging again, hotter this time, burning through whatever was left of the love I thought I had for her. You couldn't help it? I repeated, incredulous. You couldn't help but cheat on me? You couldn't help but sneak around behind my back, lying to my face every single day for months? You think that's some kind of excuse? I'm not trying to make excuses, she said, her voice barely above a whisper now. I'm trying to explain. I didn't want to hurt you. Well, you did, I said, my voice flat. You hurt me. And now you want me to what? Forgive you? She didn't answer. She just stared at me, tears still streaming down her face, waiting for me to decide what came next. But I had no idea. I didn't know how to move forward from this. I didn't know if I could move forward from this. Everything was shattered. Everything I thought we had was a lie. I don't know if I can do this, I finally muttered, shaking my head as I turned away from her. I don't know if I can be with someone who did this. Please don't say that, she begged, her voice breaking. Please don't leave me. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can make it work, I know we can. I laughed again, the sound hollow in the empty room. Therapy? You think some therapist is going to make me forget about all of this? You think we can sit down in a room with some stranger and talk our way out of you screwing another guy for months? It wasn't about him, she cried, her voice desperate. I don't even care about him. He doesn't matter to me. It was never about him. You keep saying that, but it doesn't change what you did, I snapped. It doesn't matter if it was about him or not. You cheated on me. You lied to me every day. And now you want me to just pretend like none of that happened? Like we can just go back to the way things were? She shook her head, her hands trembling in her lap. No, I know we can't go back. But we can fix it. We can move forward. Please, I'm begging you, don't throw us away. I love you. I want to be with you. I don't know if I want to be with you, I muttered, the words coming out before I could stop them. It was the truth, though. As much as I had loved her, as much as I had trusted her, I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. The room fell silent after that. Neither of us spoke for a long time. I couldn't look at her, couldn't stand the sight of her crying, begging for forgiveness that I wasn't sure I could give. Part of me wanted to leave again, walk out that door and never come back. But I couldn't move. I was frozen there, trapped between the life I thought we had and the wreckage she'd created. Please, she whispered again, barely audible now. Don't leave me. I finally looked at her, her face pale and tear-streaked, her eyes wide with fear and regret. And despite everything, despite the rage boiling inside me, I saw the woman I'd loved for 7 years. The woman I'd built my life with. I saw the person I thought I knew, the person I thought I could trust. But now, all I saw was a stranger. I don't know what to do, I said quietly, my voice barely holding together. I don't know if I can forgive this. I'll do anything, she whispered. Please, just, don't give up on us. Please. I didn't answer. I couldn't. All I knew was that things would never be the same again. After that night, everything changed. I didn't pack a bag and storm out. I didn't sleep on the couch, either. I just existed in this weird, empty version of our home, pretending like I wasn't falling apart inside. She kept trying to talk to me, kept saying she was sorry, but every word out of her mouth felt like salt in a wound. It didn't matter what she said, it couldn't change what she had done. I didn't trust her anymore, and I didn't know if I ever would again. The worst part? I couldn't even yell at her anymore. I got all that anger out in one night, and after that, I felt hollow. There was nothing left but this cold, quiet fury simmering inside me, waiting to burst. But here's the thing, I wasn't going to be the guy who just let it slide. I wasn't going to be the idiot who gets cheated on and then forgives her a week later like nothing happened. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling. I wanted her to understand what it was like to have your entire life torn apart because of someone else's choices. And yeah, part of me wanted revenge, not some over-the-top movie-style crap, but something real. Something that would hit her where it hurt. She begged for us to go to therapy, said she'd do anything to fix this. But I knew she was desperate to avoid the fallout. She didn't want her perfect little world crumbling around her. She didn't want anyone to know she was the villain in this story. So I started playing along, telling her I'd think about therapy, that maybe we could work through it. I pretended like I was starting to forgive her, but in reality, I was planning my move. I'd already decided that she wasn't going to get off easy. I spent a few days working from home, gathering evidence. I wasn't going to be the guy blindsided in court when she tried to make me look like the bad guy. I dug through her phone, her emails, everything I could find. I even got a lawyer, one of those no-nonsense types who specialized in divorce cases. I wanted to be ready for whatever came next, and I wanted her to know that I wasn't some pushover. I started with something small, pulling back on any kind of affection. No hugs, no kisses, nothing. I stopped initiating any contact, just to see how she'd react. At first, she tried harder, constantly throwing herself at me, crying, begging for forgiveness. But I stayed distant, cold, calculating. I could see it was driving her insane. She'd wake up in the middle of the night and find me staring at the ceiling, wide awake, and she'd just break down, sobbing, asking me to talk to her. Why won't you talk to me? She'd ask through tears, her voice shaking. I don't have anything to say, I'd reply, and that was true. I wasn't ready to say what was really on my mind. Then, I went for her image. I knew she prided herself on being this put-together, respectable woman. She had this whole thing going on where she was the perfect wife, the perfect friend, the perfect person. She loved being the center of attention at social events, always talking about how great everything was. But now, her life wasn't so perfect, and I was about to make sure everyone knew it. There was this dinner party she'd planned weeks in advance, some gathering with her friends and their husbands, the usual fake smiles and wine glasses kind of deal. She asked if I still wanted to go, and I told her sure, why not? I could tell she was surprised. She probably thought I'd stay home, that I wasn't up for it after everything that had happened. But I was ready. I had a plan. The night of the party, I played the role of the good husband. Dressed nice, smiled at everyone, held her hand like nothing was wrong. She seemed nervous, constantly glancing at me, probably worried I'd snap in front of everyone. And in a way, I did. After a few drinks, her friends started asking about us, how we were doing, what we had planned for the holidays. Typical small talk, nothing special. That's when I dropped the bomb. "Oh, we've been going through a rough patch lately," I said casually, sipping my drink. Her head whipped around so fast I thought she might break her neck. She stared at me, wide-eyed, trying to figure out what I was doing. "Oh," one of her friends asked, looking concerned. "Everything okay?" "Not really," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. "Turns out my wife's been cheating on me." The whole room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. All eyes were on us, and I could feel her panic without even looking at her. I let the moment hang there for a bit, savoring the shock on everyone's faces. "What?" one of the guys asked, his jaw practically on the floor. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "I found out a few days ago. It's been going on for months. I guess I wasn't good enough for her anymore." Her face had gone pale, her hands trembling as she tried to keep it together. "Mike, please." "Oh, don't try to explain it," I said, cutting her off. "You've done enough explaining already. Everyone deserves to know the truth, don't they?" I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just laying it all out there, calmly, for everyone to see. And that's what made it so brutal. She couldn't spin this. She couldn't paint herself as the victim in front of all these people who had no idea what had been going on behind closed doors. Her friends looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. Some of them looked at her with pity, others with disgust. No one knew what to say. I had stolen the narrative right out from under her, and there was no recovering from that. Not in front of these people. She couldn't make excuses, couldn't pretend it was some misunderstanding. I'd made sure of that. She started crying, of course. Her perfect little world was falling apart in front of her eyes, and there wasn't a damn thing she could do to stop it. I stayed long enough to make sure the damage was done. Then I grabbed my coat, said a quick goodbye, and walked out the door without a second glance. I didn't need to stick around to see how it played out. I'd already done what I came to do. On the drive home, I didn't feel proud of myself. I didn't feel happy either. But I felt something. Satisfaction, maybe. I had wanted her to feel what it was like to lose control of everything. To watch everything she cared about come crashing down around her. And I'd gotten that. When I got home, I sat in the living room, staring at the walls, waiting for her to come back. I knew she'd follow me eventually. And when she finally did, she was a wreck. She came in crying, stumbling over her words, trying to explain why she did it, why she was so messed up. "Why did you do that?" she sobbed, standing in the doorway, her makeup smeared from all the crying. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. How could you do that to me? How could you do that to me?" I shot back, standing up to face her. "You didn't care about how I felt when you were screwing around with Brad, did you?" She froze at the mention of his name, like hearing it out loud made it all real again. "I wasn't. I didn't mean." "I don't care what you meant," I said, my voice cold. "I don't care what your excuses are. You did this. You lied to me for months. You destroyed our marriage, and now you want to play the victim because I didn't let you get away with it? I don't think so." She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, begging me to stop, to let it go, to give her another chance. But I just stood there, watching her fall apart, feeling nothing. "I want a divorce," I finally said, my voice calm. "I already talked to a lawyer. We're done." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. No, no, please, you can't mean that. I do, I said, nodding. I'm done. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You can stay here until we figure out the details, but I'm moving out as soon as possible. No, she sobbed, shaking her head. No, please, we can fix this, I swear. We can go to therapy, we can. No, I cut her off, my voice firm. I don't want to fix it. I don't want you. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. She collapsed back onto the floor, crying harder than I'd ever seen her cry before. But I didn't feel bad for her. Not anymore. I was done feeling bad for her. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't care. Anywhere was better than being there. I left the house that night and didn't come back until late. I spent most of the evening driving around with no real destination, just trying to clear my head. But there was one thought I couldn't shake, one person I couldn't stop thinking about. Brad. The asshole who thought it was okay to mess with my wife, with my life. He was just as guilty as she was. And as much as I wanted to see her suffer, I wanted him to feel it too. It wasn't enough to just cut her off. He needed to pay for what he'd done. I knew where he worked. I had dug that up along with everything else during my few days of gathering evidence. He worked at some upscale real estate office downtown, the type of guy who sold fancy condos to rich people. I even found a picture of him on the company website, square jaw, designer suit, that whole fake I'm successful look. The kind of guy who thought he could have anything and anyone he wanted. Well, he was about to find out that wasn't true. But I wasn't going to do anything stupid. I wasn't going to throw a punch, wasn't going to walk into his office and make a scene. No, this was going to be smarter than that. I wasn't going to let him walk away clean. The next morning, I started setting things in motion. I called my lawyer again, told him to dig into every possible angle: adultery, workplace misconduct, anything we could use against Brad in case things got messy. Then I put in a few calls to some people I knew from college who worked in real estate. Nothing big, just enough to ask around and get some dirt on Brad. I wasn't looking for anything too dramatic, just enough to figure out his weak spots. Turns out, Brad wasn't the golden boy he pretended to be. Sure, he was good at his job, but he was also known for cutting corners, fudging numbers here and there to close deals. He wasn't breaking the law exactly, but he was walking the line, and it wouldn't take much to push him over. I spent the next few days putting the pieces together. I didn't talk to my wife much. We were just existing in the same house, waiting for the inevitable divorce. She tried to apologize a few more times, cried a lot, but I kept my distance. I had bigger things on my mind. I had Brad on my mind. I managed to get a hold of some internal documents from his company, stuff that wasn't exactly public but wasn't impossible to find if you knew the right people. And I found exactly what I was looking for. There were some discrepancies in his recent deals, enough to raise questions if someone were to dig deeper. His boss didn't know, but if someone tipped them off, well, that would be the end of his high-flying career. But it wasn't just about his job. That would have been too easy. No, I needed to hit him where it really hurt. So I took things a step further. One night, I followed him. I knew his routine by then, where he liked to hang out, the gym he went to, the bar he hit after work. It was all so predictable. The guy thought he was untouchable, walking around like he owned the world. He didn't even notice me tailing him. Not that night. Or the next one. I waited for my moment, and it finally came when he left the bar late one Friday night. He was alone, his car parked a few blocks away. He didn't notice me when I slid into the alley ahead of him, keeping my face low, my hoodie pulled up. When he passed by, I stepped out, making sure he could see my face clearly. He stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes going wide when he recognized me. "Mike," he stammered, looking around like he was hoping someone would show up to save him. "Brad," I said, my voice calm. "We need to talk." He swallowed hard, clearly nervous. "Look, man, I don't know what she told you, but I didn't let him finish. Save it, I snapped. I know exactly what happened. I've seen the messages. I know everything. He took a step back, his hands raised like he was trying to calm me down. It wasn't. I mean, it's not what you think. Oh, it's exactly what I think, I cut him off, stepping closer. You've been screwing my wife for months. You think that's okay? He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. He just stood there, looking like a deer caught in the headlights, too scared to even make up an excuse. You think you can just walk away from this? I asked, keeping my voice steady. You think you can screw around with someone else's wife and then go back to your nice little job, your nice little life, like nothing happened? He was starting to sweat now. Look, man, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. Oh, it's out of hand, all right, I said, nodding slowly. You're gonna regret this, Brad. You're gonna regret everything. He tried to back away again, but I grabbed him by the collar, pulling him close enough that he could hear every word I said. You listen to me, and you listen good, I growled. You're done. Your job, your reputation, your whole perfect life, it's over. I've got everything I need to take you down. You're finished. Mike, please, he begged, his voice shaking. You don't have to do this. I don't have to do anything, I said, shoving him back. But I'm going to. You're gonna lose everything, just like I did. And I'm gonna enjoy watching it happen. He didn't say anything after that. He just stood there, pale and trembling, like he knew there was no way out. I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in the alley, knowing his world was about to fall apart. I wasn't done yet, though. The next morning, I made the call. I'd found the right person at his company, someone in HR who would be very interested to know about the way Brad had been conducting business. I sent them everything I had, every little detail about his shady deals, his misconduct, everything. And I knew it wouldn't take long for them to act on it. By the end of the week, I got the confirmation I was waiting for. Brad had been suspended, pending a full investigation. His boss was furious, and it looked like there was no way he was getting out of this without losing his job. And that wasn't even the best part. The best part was what came next. I had one more card to play, one more way to make sure Brad knew exactly what it felt like to have everything ripped away from him. I wasn't content with just ruining his career. I wanted him to feel it personally. So I went after his relationship. He had a girlfriend, a pretty blonde he'd been dating for a while. They didn't live together, but they were serious enough that she showed up in a few of his Instagram posts. I found her easily enough, and once I had her info, I sent her a message. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. I sent her screenshots of the texts between Brad and my wife, proof that he'd been cheating on her, just like he'd been helping my wife cheat on me. She responded within minutes, and I could feel her anger through the screen. She didn't even ask for an explanation. She just thanked me for telling her and told me she was done with him. A couple of days later, I saw the fallout on social media. His Instagram was gone. She had deleted all the pictures of him, scrubbed him from her life like he never existed. I didn't need to see the details to know what had happened. Brad's perfect little life was crumbling around him, and it was exactly what he deserved. By the end of the month, he was fired. Blacklisted from the real estate firm. No one wanted to touch him after that. His reputation was trashed, his relationship was over, and he had nothing left. Just like I wanted. And me? I felt better. Not good, not whole. But better. I hadn't fixed everything, hadn't healed the damage my wife had done. But at least I knew Brad was suffering, too. At least I knew he wasn't walking away without consequences. Revenge might not fix everything, but it sure as hell made things a little easier to swallow. The fallout with Brad felt like a victory, but it didn't fix anything between me and her. The house was quiet after that, too quiet. Every conversation we had was short, strained, and filled with this unspoken tension. She had no idea what I'd done to Brad, but she knew things were falling apart between us. I kept my distance, moved into the guest room, and only spoke to her when I had to. We hadn't talked about the divorce since that night, but we both knew it was coming. She tried to act normal, tried to pretend like we could still have a conversation without the weight of everything hanging over us. But every time she opened her mouth to say something, I could see the fear in her eyes. She was terrified of what was coming next, and part of me enjoyed watching her squirm. But even I couldn't avoid the inevitable forever. We had to talk. We had to figure out what the hell we were going to do next. It started one night after dinner. I was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through some papers from my lawyer when she came in. She stood there for a second, fidgeting with the edge of her shirt, clearly nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't look up right away. Part of me didn't want to. I knew this conversation wasn't going to be easy, and I wasn't sure I was ready to deal with it. But I couldn't avoid it forever. "Yeah," I said finally, setting the papers down. "I guess we should." She pulled out the chair across from me and sat down, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the table like she couldn't bear to look at me. For a few moments, neither of us said anything. The silence was thick, heavy with all the things we hadn't said since that night. "I don't know where to start," she said after a while, her voice shaking a little. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the divorce." "Okay," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't want to give her anything to work with. She hesitated, biting her lip like she was trying to figure out the right words. "I don't want that," she said quietly. "I don't want us to end like this." I let out a slow breath, leaning back in my chair. "Well, you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat." Her face crumpled at that, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. She'd been crying a lot lately, but it didn't affect me the way it used to. I was too far gone to feel anything other than anger and bitterness. Her tears didn't mean anything to me anymore. "I know I messed up," she whispered, wiping at her eyes. "I know I hurt you in a way that I can't take back, and I'm so sorry for that. I really am." I didn't respond. What could I say? Her apology didn't change anything. It didn't undo the betrayal. It didn't make me forget the messages, the lies, the months she spent with another man while pretending to be my wife. "I don't know what I was thinking," she continued, her voice breaking. "I felt so lost, so disconnected from everything. And Brad, he was just a distraction. I didn't love him. I never did. Doesn't really matter, does it?" I said coldly. "Whether you loved him or not, you still chose him over me. Over us." "I know," she sobbed, her hands trembling in her lap. "I know, and I hate myself for it. I wake up every day wishing I could go back and change it, but I can't. All I can do is ask for your forgiveness." I stared at her, trying to figure out if she really believed that was enough. Forgiveness? She thought this was something I could just forgive? Like it was a fight about leaving the dishes in the sink or forgetting to pay a bill? This was our entire marriage, our life together, that she had thrown away for some fling. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly, my voice tight. "I don't know if I even want to try." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "Please, Mike," she whispered. "Please don't say that. We can work through this. We can fix it." I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Fix it? How do you fix something like this? How do you expect me to just forget everything you've done? To pretend like you didn't betray me in the worst possible way?" "I'm not asking you to forget," she said quickly, her voice desperate. "I know you can't. But I'm asking you to give me a chance. A chance to make things right." I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table, my eyes locked on hers. "How, exactly, are you planning to make this right? Because no matter what you say, no matter what you do, it doesn't change the fact that you cheated. You lied to me, you broke my trust, and now you expect me to just, what? Move on? Act like everything's fine?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, I don't expect that. I just want us to try. Please, Mike. I love you. I don't want to lose you. Love? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You don't get to use that word anymore. Not with me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done what you did. Her sobs grew louder, her whole body shaking as she tried to pull herself together. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she cried. I know that. But please, don't throw us away. I looked away, unable to stand the sight of her anymore. I didn't want to hear her begging for something she didn't deserve. I didn't want to deal with the guilt she was trying to push onto me. I wasn't the one who had destroyed our marriage. She was. And now, she was trying to make me feel bad for not wanting to fix it. What do you expect me to do? I asked, my voice hard. Stay with you? Pretend like we can go back to the way things were? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached across the table, grabbing my hand with hers. Her touch felt foreign, wrong. I didn't pull away, but I didn't return the gesture either. I just stared at our hands, hers trembling, mine cold and unresponsive. I know it'll take time, she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. We can go to therapy, we can start over, we can. I don't want to go to therapy, I said, cutting her off. I don't want to start over. I don't even want to be here right now. Her grip tightened on my hand, like she was afraid that if she let go, I'd disappear. Please, Mike, she begged. Don't give up on us. We've been through so much together. Don't let this be the end. I pulled my hand away from hers, standing up from the table. This is the end, I said, my voice flat. I already told you. I've talked to a lawyer. I want a divorce. She stared up at me, her face pale and tear-streaked, her eyes wide with shock. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, please don't do this. It's already done, I said, turning away from her. I'll stay here until we figure out the details, but after that, I'm gone. Mike, please, she cried, standing up and rushing toward me. We can fix this. We can make it work. I love you. I need you. I turned to face her, my expression cold and distant. I don't need you, I said quietly. Not anymore. She broke down at that, collapsing onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. But I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel anything. I was numb, too far gone to care about her tears, her apologies, her desperate pleas. I'll call the lawyer tomorrow, I said, walking toward the door. We'll figure out the details. I left her there, crying on the kitchen floor, and walked out of the house. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't coming back. After that conversation, everything felt final. There were no more arguments, no more pleading. It was just cold, hard reality setting in. I stayed at the house for a while longer, but it wasn't a home anymore. We didn't speak unless we had to, and even then, it was nothing but logistical stuff, splitting the bills, figuring out when to start moving out. She walked around the house like a ghost, trying to avoid me as much as I was trying to avoid her. I had already contacted the lawyer, and the divorce process was moving forward. There wasn't much to fight over. We didn't have kids, and neither of us was interested in dragging this out in court. We agreed to sell the house and split the money. She could keep her car, I'd keep mine. Clean, simple. I wasn't going to make this harder than it needed to be. But even though it was simple on paper, it felt complicated in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had led up to this point. The life we had built together. The trust one had in her. The future we had planned. All of it was gone now, shattered because of her choices. And as much as I hated her for what she did, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost something important. Something that I didn't know how to get back. I started spending more time at work, trying to avoid being in the house as much as possible. Being there felt suffocating. Every room reminded me of something, of us, of what we used to be. The living room where we used to binge-watch shows, the kitchen where we'd cooked together, laughing over burned dinners and spilled wine. The bedroom. I couldn't even go in there anymore. I slept on the couch most nights, even though I had technically moved into the guest room. The idea of lying in the bed where she had been with someone else made me sick. One day, I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her phone. She didn't look up when I walked in, and I was glad for the silence. But as I started walking toward the stairs, she spoke. "Mike," she said softly, her voice hoarse. I stopped, turning to look at her. She looked tired, worn out. Like the weight of everything was finally catching up with her. "What?" I asked, my tone more irritated than I intended. She didn't meet my eyes. She just stared down at the table, her fingers nervously tracing patterns on the surface. I wanted to say thank you. I frowned, not understanding. For what? For not dragging this out, she said quietly. For not making this harder than it already is. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her that she was the one who made this hard in the first place. But what was the point? It was over. There was no use in fighting anymore. "Yeah, well," I muttered, shrugging. "No point in making a mess out of it." She nodded slowly, still not looking at me. I know I don't deserve it. After everything I've done. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I didn't want to have this conversation. I didn't want to listen to her try to justify what she did, or worse, make me feel guilty for not forgiving her. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked, my voice flat. She finally looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy from what I assumed were more nights of crying. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "For everything. For ruining what we had." I stared at her, trying to figure out what she expected me to say to that. Did she want me to tell her it was okay? That I forgave her? Because I couldn't. I didn't know if I ever would. "I don't know what you want from me," I said quietly. "We've already had this conversation. You're sorry. I get it. But it doesn't change anything." She looked down again, biting her lip. "I know. I wanted you to know how much I regret it." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Look, Lisa, we're done. We've been done for a while now. You made your choice, and now we're dealing with the consequences. That's it. There's nothing more to say." Her eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded, accepting my words. I want you to be happy," she whispered. That caught me off guard. I didn't know if she was being sincere or if it was just another way for her to try and ease her guilt. Either way, it didn't matter. I wasn't happy, and I didn't know when or if I ever would be again. "I'll figure it out," I said, my voice clipped. "I'll be fine." She looked like she wanted to say more, but I turned and walked away before she could. I didn't want to keep talking about it. I didn't want to sit there and listen to her try to fix something that was beyond repair. The weeks dragged on, and the house felt emptier and emptier. We had an offer on the house pretty quickly, and as soon as the paperwork went through, we both started packing. The plan was to split the money and go our separate ways. I had already found a small apartment on the other side of town, nothing special, but it was a place where I could start over. Moving day was weird. There wasn't any big goodbye or emotional moment. She had packed up most of her things by the time I got home, and there were just a few boxes left. I helped her carry them out to her car, and when we were done, we just stood there awkwardly in the driveway. "Good luck," she said softly, standing by her car door, her hands fidgeting with the keys. I nodded. "Yeah. You too." She opened the car door and hesitated for a second before looking back at me. "I hope you can find someone who makes you happy," she whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. So I just stood there, watching as she got into the car and drove away. And that was it. 7 years of marriage, gone just like that. No tears, no final hug, no last-minute change of heart. Just, over. I spent the rest of the day packing up my own things, taking only what I needed for the apartment. I left the rest behind: old memories, pieces of the life we had built together. I didn't want any of it. I didn't need reminders of what used to be. When I finally got to my new place, I stood in the empty apartment, staring at the boxes scattered around the floor. It was quiet, too quiet, but at least it wasn't that house. At least it wasn't filled with the ghosts of our failed marriage. The first few nights in the apartment were rough. I spent most of them lying awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the anger, the emptiness. It all swirled around in my head, keeping me up at night, gnawing at me from the inside. But slowly, things started to get better. I threw myself into work, started hitting the gym again, anything to distract myself from the thoughts that kept creeping back in. I reconnected with some old friends, went out for drinks, tried to rebuild my life piece by piece. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. As the months went by, I realized something. The anger I had felt, the hatred I had carried around for so long, it was starting to fade. It wasn't gone completely, but it wasn't as sharp as it had been. I wasn't consumed by it anymore. I wasn't defined by it. I didn't miss her. I didn't miss what we had. But I also didn't hate her the way I had before. I didn't think about her as much. I didn't care what she was doing, who she was with. She was just gone. And that was fine. One night, I was sitting on the couch in my apartment, watching TV, when it hit me. I was okay. I was finally okay. Not happy, not overjoyed, but okay. I had survived it. The betrayal, the divorce, the heartache, it hadn't destroyed me. I had come out the other side, and I was still standing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be alright.